Sorry, I was just clearing my chest. It's Anne-Marie from Charmed Life Therapy. Thank you for joining me. I feel like I owe a video. I haven't covered Lively Baldoni in a few days, and I continue to feel with this one like just checking in every few days with it. It's like when you're like signed up to Court Listener and you're following it, obviously you've got emails pumping in most days, and sometimes you feel like responding straight away, and other times you think, oh, I just need to figure this out or sit with it or see what other people are saying because it doesn't seem to make sense to me, and check in with like the legal experts, like not actually Golden and Little Girl Attorney and people like that. But I still feel like my main role is just to kind of point out where we're all at as a society with it all as a little community that is following this thing. Um, and obviously, the other day we got the contract revealed, and everybody was very excited about this. And kind of I was too, a little bit interested to see what it was all about. Blake Lively's contract that has been mysteriously sealed all this time or absent, and will she have signed it or won't she have signed it? And of course, as we suspected, she never did sign it. And it has been interesting, I guess, and a lot of people have been having, great fun pointing out certain things. And I think sometimes we all just have to watch ourselves because we do tend to get quite mean. And the meanness, the more I go into my own personal work, and how I want to feel about things going on in my life, the meanness starts to bother me, especially when in the majority, the occasional creator that is doing it, I really do like that person. So I don't like to see them going off, rather than just reporting on the facts and a bit of theory behind it and a bit of the jizz and a bit of having fun with it, to just not get mean with it at the same time. Because I know like certain people going on about, oh, look, she's promoting hair care products, and now it seems like she had a wig specialist in for this film. And I think depending on what photos you look at, I think sometimes you could say it looks like a wig when it's more like curly, but at other times it does look like Blake's natural hair. So I imagine there was a bit of both going on, but it seems a bit unfair to like penalise her for having worn a wig or a hairpiece of any kind or whatever it may have been. We're really gonna get so savage with each other. There's we should kind of be normalizing the hairpiece thing, because so many women these days are suffering from alopecia and such, and also so many men are really sensitive about hair loss. And I always say with men these days, if it does bother them, to that extent, we have. I always think when I think of hair pieces and men and like, getting extra hair, I always think of, if you're in the UK, we have Ant and Dec over here, don't we? And Declan Donnelly had the best hair transplant or whatever it is that he's got going on ever, because it just looks so natural. And I think when it comes to your confidence, if it works for you, do it, and you shouldn't really be ashamed of it. So kind of it's kind of been bothering me a little bit, I think, the kind of delight people have been experiencing just recently in some of the things that have been revealed. And I think this is a very normal process in Hollywood to be wearing hair pieces and such, man and woman. So yeah, she was promoting a hair care, but she wasn't exactly going out saying, Blake was not going out saying, look how brilliant my hair looks in this movie. This is how I got it. She was not saying that, in all fairness to her. So it feels a little bit hypocritical to be getting nasty about it. And yeah, I mean, I have to be honest and say, I think the fact, actually, it's kind of interesting that there's all this Oscar or awards clauses in there as well, in that contract, in that um, she wanted X amount of money extra should she get nominated for a SAG or an Oscar or Golden Globe, whatever it may be, and how much extra she would get if she won such and such an award. And yeah, you can take the mickey and just say, oh, Blake Lively to be even thinking she would be considered for an Oscar. But I think it's important to kind of just pay attention to that because that is where her headspace was with this film because you play somebody like where there has to be a big physical transformation or it is about say domestic A or SA or whatever it may be. You do tend to, I would imagine as an actress, you do think, oh, yeah, that kind of puts me in the category. I'm out of the fluff category, I'm into the serious category. This may be my moment. And the thing is, to be fair to her, there's been some left field times in life where somebody has, out of the blue, won an Oscar or whatever. And I mean, look at how many times Demi Moore, for all things, was nominated for The Substance. Look at how Marissa Tomei won for My Cousin Vinny. It's not entirely out of the blue, but yeah, I think what it kind of says is very early doors. I've always said, like, considering she was coming off the back of that fourth pregnancy, she was probably feeling like she was getting older, feeling a bit more mumsy, maybe. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know what I mean? It kind of puts you in a different mental, emotional capacity, I think. And I do think with this film all along, like I've always kept harking back to it being this perfect storm of events that might not have happened in a different way at at a different time because of her life and what was going on in it and Justin's perspective on life and the opportunity of this film and the ability that there might have been to widen it um into a franchise or whatever it may be. So I do think early doors that whole business and the awards, it kind of does flag up. She did think this was her moment. She felt like she'd got a bit of directing experience behind her, maybe a bit of producing experience. She felt like she had the contacts. She came into this with a bit of a chip on her shoulder, I think, which is part of the problem. And I think she really did. I think maybe we're maybe seeing that maybe early doors for sure there was this thing of could I take over this project. I know we've mooted it before and we've all been trying to figure out at what point did she say I want control of this, and we've been trying to figure out really, haven't we, how early it was in effect. So I think there were some interesting things that came up in the contract to do with that. And also this business of, as many of us, including myself, said early doors, how does this stand up when her lawsuit is all about her as a person? Yet the contract very much says her company contracted her out to It Ends With Us movie, whereas Blake Lively, is personally targeting Wayfarer Studios. So in the terminology of her lawsuit, the language seems off, doesn't it? Which many of us have said all along. Those of us with and without legal knowledge have said, is this quite right? Will this hold up? So that's still to be explored, hasn't it? And of course, we've got interesting things going on that Jen Abrams claims that she may still be able to force Stephanie Jones to pay for her legal expenses in regards to the Lively Wayfarer case, that it was an incredibly dry document when the judge made this decision on Jen Abel's motion for indemnity, if you like, or whatever it was. It was either Steph Jones trying to boot it out or her motion to stay in. I can't remember which, but it was a very dry document when the judge ruled on it. But I thought, there is no way in hell I can unpack that for you. I would not have a clue. So I kind of had to wait and just gather the gist of it. I think even ChatGPT was confused when I tried to run it through ChatGPT. But yeah, basically, she's still in with a shout because she was employed by Jones Works at the time all of this stuff happened. And you could be argued and many of us could argue that have followed this, that actually she was doing her best to protect Stephanie Jones throughout that period because she was trying to act as a buffer between Stephanie Jones and Wayfarer, because Wayfarer was saying, we don't want this woman doing X, Y, and Z and going to Leslie Sloan and the rest of it. And clearly she is. And I do think there was an element of, to be fair to Jen Abel, I think she was often trying to protect Stephanie Jones from herself and clearly trying to enact Wayfarer's wishes at the same time. So yeah, so she's still in with a shout of having to have Stephanie Jones pay her legal expenses in the Lively Wayfarer case. Of course, she's in a separate lawsuit with Stephanie Jones as a counter complainant because Steph Jones is suing her. But yeah, it puts it in an interesting position of it puts Blake and Stephanie back in contention more directly, doesn't it? Because it's like Steph Jones really doesn't want Blake to win now in some sense because it would possibly mean that she might have to pay Jen Abel's legal expenses, which will be quite substantial at this point in time, won't they? So yeah, I'm gonna check in with some documents in a moment, but I just kind of wanted to talk about meanness a little bit in general and kind of what I'm seeing across the way. Taylor Swift kind of gets pulled into all of this tangentially, doesn't she? Like, because she's like mildly connected is probably the wrong word. People, a lot of people feel she's strongly connected, but it's kind of all dovetailing, isn't it, with the new album launch and that. It's really, I think it's a really interesting time. It's certainly a really interesting time in my life because I've said before, I'm not political, but just the way my own, in the last couple of years, because I've done a lot of work on myself, because I used to feel like, because I was brought up to feel that my opinions on things were not valid or not to be considered. So the last couple of years of my life and the journey for myself that I've been on is about figuring out my own opinions on things. And I don't want to be a very political animal. I don't like politics as a thing in terms of I don't really tend to trust many politicians. And, I don't really swing one way or the other. I like to judge um, the items on just how I feel about it on an individual basis, as I would judge a person on a case by case basis. I wouldn't dismiss somebody because they were conservative or dismiss somebody because they were Democrat. I would want to tackle it on a person by person issue. But it's been an interesting conversation with the whole Taylor thing because clearly she's come out as a Democrat over time and stood behind certain candidates. But now, suddenly, because she's happy and loved up and about to get married, and I think we're all guessing she'll probably have children fairly quickly. And she said in one of the recent songs, hasn't she, that which she got hammered for, as if she was some kind of white supremacist, that the fact that she wanted to have children that looked like Travis on the block, which is a metaphor. It's not literal because will Taylor Swift be living on a block? No, she won't be living on a block. So it's a metaphor in that song to say, get the whole block looking like you. In Taylor Swift's land, the whole block looking like you is whatever vast estate she'll be living on, isn't it? That's her block. It's not literally talking about a street somewhere or whatever. It's not talking about white supremacy on a street. She's literally talking about in her own private backyard, get the whole block looking like you. You know, the ones that she has control over birthing, basically. And so many people took offense to this and attacked her as if she was promoting white supremacy and the honest to God, the things that have been going on in the press that have been so mean. And certain people are saying Swifties are turning against her. I think there's a certain element of people are turning against her, but I think your genuine Swifties are not turning against her. But it has been an interesting thing that has been in the mainstream, this idea of, does wanting to be happy and wanting to be married and wanting to have children instantly make you a Republican and a Trump supporter? it's as if there's this idea the Democrats disavow you when you find a way to be happy. It's been really quite interesting. It's like, and this, because my whole thing right now is trying to follow the A Course in Miracles path of finding love wherever you can and even in your enemies, and trying to live your life in this way that you don't have to defend yourself, that there's no need to defend yourself because you're not under attack. Yet you see it all over. And when you start following A Course in Miracles, you do start seeing the meanness and the spite that is everywhere and the darkness and the unhappiness. And it really smacks you in the face how much people go looking for trouble. So it has been quite interesting. Taylor was on the Graham Norton show a week or so ago when the album came out, and Lewis Capaldi was on as well. You might not be as quite familiar with Lewis Capaldi in America. I'm not quite sure how big he is over there. But Scottish guy just says what's on his mind, very blunt. So anyway, they were on. Graham Norton gets all his guests out more or less at the same time, apart from the musical guest who pops on at the end, which happened to be Lewis. So Graham was clearly promoting Lewis's EP because he had it there, he was showing it to camera. And Lewis kind of just happened to say, "Oh, I've been told not to talk." Graham started talking about it. Lewis says, "Oh, I've been told not to talk about it." And he had a bit of a smile on his face. I mean, he knew he was shit stirring, basically. Um, and Taylor goes, "Who by?" And, everybody kind of that was on there on the panel, a little bit of fuss. And Taylor got so hammered for that. It was like, told clearly Taylor Swift's team have said behind the scenes, you can't talk about your CD. And people are analysing the fact that she said who by and looking at her face and every facial expression. But the thing is, no matter what the truth of it is it's all just story. You can choose a good story or you can choose a bad story. You can choose to make her a villain or you can choose to make her a victim or annoyed by it or whatever. Because the thing is, to me, my interpretation of it was quite different. I am completely open to the fact somebody on her team might have said to him not to do that. But whether it was stupid if they'd not done a bit of research on Lewis Capaldi, because he just has no filter whatsoever. Gets himself into trouble at times. But the thing is, how I read that, I mean, why would he be told you can't talk about that when Graham literally is showing his EP? So how is he not going to talk about it when literally Graham's got the product right there? They had slides with his tour dates. And so somebody has told him it quite likely might have been Graham's team themselves. Why would it be Taylor's team that feel they can approach another artist and say that as if they have sway over him? That didn't make sense to me, because you would literally tell somebody else's team that were not yours or weren't the programs where to go, wouldn't you? Especially if you were Lewis Capaldi, if you know all about him. So it didn't make sense that. It's likely, if anything, it was a member of Graham's team or not to go on about it, or this is your thing, whatever. We don't know what agreement Taylor's team had with Graham, but she was clearly taken aback. And I took it to mean, because somebody said she said thank you, or she looked at Graham and went thank you. But if it's there, you blink and you miss it. But what I took that to mean is, wow, that makes me look really bad. I don't know anything about it. One story, one version, my version, if you like, is that she might have said thank you. I didn't see it, but she might have said that, meaning, God, that's going to have got me in a lot of trouble because it looks like it was somebody on my team that said it. As far as I know, somebody on my team didn't say it. But everybody else was taking it to say Taylor's team told Lewis Capaldi, you cannot promote your product on this show. And I think that's what I find. I'm getting really sensitive to the meanness, even when it comes to Blake and Ryan. I noticed the other day, and I guess many of you well, watch Maureen Callahan if you don't watch the kind of conservative or Republican people on YouTube. So she has this YouTube channel, The Nerve, and she's, if you think Megyn Kelly's hard, I think Maureen Callahan's harder. She's really tough on people. I don't know why I'm really thirsty today, but I am. But anyway, she for some reason out of the blue, all of a sudden, has picked up all the old Ryan Reynolds stories that we've all been factoring in all along, and she has noticed this business of him admitting that, well, in his terminology, he burned down a wing of his former school, didn't he? But she's picked up that the whole school burned down, and she was literally very vociferously, without one use of the word alleged or anything else, literally saying Ryan Reynolds burned down his former school and he didn't talk about it until what he believed to be the statute of limitations had dropped. And she spent a good portion of the show the other night just literally proclaiming everything that we think might be true about Ryan Reynolds to actually be true and to demonize him and all of the rest of it. So it's a funny old time in society, I think. And as stupid as this case has been, I do think a lot that's going on and how everybody is being questioned about everything, about whether they're good, whether they're bad, what side of the political argument they fall on. Are they pro-trans, against trans? Are they fascists? Are they racist? It's like it seems to have been a little trigger point, if you like, for all sorts of things being brought to the surface. I don't know what you think. That's what I'm starting to think. I always thought there was something about this case, why I felt moved to speak about it early on, before we even really considered the Me Too aspect and that all very heavily. I think I always knew there was more to this case, otherwise I wouldn't be bothered wanting to talk about it. Um, and I think we just still see it growing and growing in some aspects, that God knows what damage will have been done by the end of it. So just let me check my little notes. So yeah, I think that was it. So yeah, it was just, I won't mention the creators that I just felt were being a little bit mean, but there were a few of them on YouTube or that do multiple platforms, people that I generally watch or I'm aware of in my periphery. And I just thought, I think there's just ways and means of covering this thing without getting really personal and really nasty and sinking to what might be the level of the people we're concerned about. I think it's important we all do that. I think while ever we look at it with love and an open mind, and this idea of we personally are not under attack by what's going on, then we don't get dragged down by it or bogged down on it, and we don't do ourselves a disservice, I think is what I'm trying to say. So let's kind of just, I'm not going to go through a lot of documents. That wasn't the purpose of today. Just, we'll have a quick look because there are some things. So let me see what I've got, but I don't want to spend an eternity on it for you because I'm sure you'll have picked up on a lot from other people. So obviously there was a couple of little bits that were unsealed. We're still waiting on that audio recording. Obviously, we know now at this point that it's this lady Claire Ayoub, if I'm pronouncing that properly, that wrote and directed Empire Waste, which was a Wayfarer production. So it's this lady that apparently felt verbally abused by Justin Baldoni on the set and asked him not to be part of the promotion, which interestingly enough would have fallen in the fall of August 2024. So there's an overlap, isn't there? And the reason the reason Blake believes it gets to be a part of her case is we believe this recording holds that segment where Steve Sarowitz is talking about what he will do in terms of wreaking havoc on Blake and Ryan, basically, isn't it? That's why this thing is in. So we're all waiting on whether there's going to be a transcript or you'll actually hear it or whatever it is. But I guess it being this Claire Ayoub was a bit of a surprise because everybody was like, "Oh, we have to go off and Google who this is now." None of us know. It was a bit of a, it was a bit of a deflation, wasn't it? So there's little bits of snippets of nearly said depression transcripts that came out, deposition transcripts. So there was a little bit that came out from Danny Greenberg, who was Justin's agent at WME. And I wonder with this Danny Greenberg if he feels a little bit bad about some of this because you know, it probably wasn't his decision to terminate Justin as a client. It would have been people whose pay grade was way above his, wouldn't it? Like Ari Emanuel. So he, in his deposition testimony, talked about Lively's ongoing complaints about creative aspects of the film and her actions to hijack control of the film through threats, which he viewed as extortion, including threats that she would not return to the set unless she was given control over the script and editing. So Danny Greenberg has testified basically from the sounds of it to extortion. He said the word extortion several times, and that was his personal choice of word to describe what was going on in his own words. And that was clarified by Ellen, it would seem, at the deposition. That's how he felt it would be described. But this Danny Greenberg was also trying to coach Justin on how to phrase it properly too, so in order to get the right outcome or defend himself, I guess. So let's see, will it share that one? The only other little bit here was that again during the deposition they were asking people to clarify where did this filming, where did this supposed segment where the supposed SH took place, that it was New Jersey, New York. So we're still going on about I don't think I've got the bit up here that I wanted. The other bit was to do with the hairdresser, Blake's hairdresser. There was a tiny snippet that got revealed from her that literally was only about what she witnessed as supposedly inappropriate behavior. And you've got to remember that this Vivian Baker is being, her attorney, from what we understand, is being paid for by Blake. So I'm not sure how that can be classed as independent in any sense, but she testified to what she felt as to be as inappropriate behavior during that first phase of filming. So I guess that's when whoever was coming into the trailer. But what was she being told? Was she being told that Justin or Jamie had been invited to come over while she was feeding or partially uncovered or whatever it may be? The woman's got bodyguards outside and God knows what's going on. She probably has a nanny on set with her as well, Blake. So it's like, how can we trust what Vivian Baker says about inappropriate behavior? Because, it's like this with Blake, isn't it? It's like, how do you separate it? How can you say it's truthful? Because it will be based off whatever Blake has told her in terms of whatever something made her feel. The minute those men were out of the door, she could have been saying anything to those makeup artists and feeding that into her mind. As human beings, as I said before, we are so very easy to condition. We're so receptive. And I say this about all of us. It's not that I feel like some people are necessarily more gullible than other people. We're all gullible because we kind of, for the most part, the majority of us are looking to gel as a community and get on with people. We do tend to back each other up, especially when people tend to say things like, it made you feel a certain way, or icky or yucky, or whatever it may be. We tend to get that emotional gut thing that goes, oh, yeah, I need to empathize with the way you feel. And so we're very easily conditioned when we're not like tuned in and thinking, I didn't feel that. I didn't notice that. We tend to go with the emotional thing of, oh, yeah. If it made you feel like that's starting to make me feel like that as well. We do tend as human beings to fall into that trap quite a bit. It's, as I said before, it's like that herd mentality thing. You have to watch who you hang out with because when you're not switched on and questioning everything, and most of us don't go around questioning everything all the time, we do just tend to absorb things before we've even realised what's going on. So I don't know that we can really take Blake's hairdresser's account into evidence. I still think, and I guess it goes for the Claire Ayoub thing as well about Justin, is that whatever alleged neurodivergence he has, I mean, he said himself, but we don't really know what it is. I just think sometimes Justin will speak without a lot of forethought. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think he's probably very honest and very emotionally honest. And he probably doesn't realize that sometimes some of the things he says may be quite jarring, especially to be. I might get myself in bother here. But I do feel like the Hollywood set seem to have this problem with emotional honesty. They don't understand what it looks like, that they're so looking for trouble all of the time. Um, that it's like how Blake was so offended by him monetizing the women's movement, or what she likes to term Justin monetizing the women's movement. That again, it's like the Taylor Swift thing. There's a certain aspect of society that seem to be conditioned in that way that are really looking to nitpick people's every piece of behavior. So you're not allowed to speak off the cuff or from the heart because you're going to get a label of some kind slapped on you. And I do, it's like how Jenny Slate allegedly turned Jamie's offer of paying that $15,000 bill for the apartment that she didn't like and stuff that, and whatever he said to back that up about protecting the mother or honoring the mother or whatever it is. She kind of really went, oh, don't like, don't like, don't like. I'm finding that offensive. And I question whether this verbal abuse thing, the Claire Ayoub thing, is a similar thing. It's just when you adopt certain beliefs, it's kind of like how I say about Blake, and she has a problem with emotional intimacy. I feel like this is another thing like it. It's like, oh, you're a bit full on for me. I can't handle that. I'm finding because I think it's like me. I have to reel myself in sometimes because I can be very blunt when I see people telling themselves a load of rot, like that are conditioning themselves with it. And sometimes I think, oh, do I really want to respond to this on Facebook because I might just be a bit too blunt. And I do think sometimes when you're not a spiritually engaged person and you're engaging with spiritually engaged people and they expect to be able to just say it like it is to you and cut to the heart of the matter, that you kind of go, ugh, I don't need your, how Blake kind of accused Justin, didn't she, of putting his emotions all over her, or words to that effect. I don't need your this or on, and I don't need your this, and I don't need your whatever all over me, she said at one point about various different things. And I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's the personalities and of Justin and Jamie and the faith. I think sometimes will feel a lot to people who haven't done any kind of shadow work or work on the spirituality or unpacked the demons and all of the rest of it. So I do wonder about this verbal abuse, what verbal abuse means to Claire Ayoub. And the thing is, it probably won't be in that recording whenever we do get a transcript or whatever, because that's a meeting with Steve Sarowitz. It's not necessarily, she's not necessarily going to say in that recording whatever words it was that Justin said to her. it's more a conversation with Steve Sarowitz to do with, presumably, to do with, she thinks, well, I think what she says in the course of that affidavit is that when she went to this meeting with Steve Sarowitz, and she didn't know what the context of the meeting was going to be, and she was worried that it would be about this topic of why wasn't Justin Baldoni, why she didn't want Justin Baldoni to be part of the marketing of Empire Waste. I think she thought that she was going to get called into question on that with this in this meeting with Steve Sarowitz. So when we do get that recording or that transcript or whatever it is, it might not say at all what Justin supposedly said. It might be the other side of the conversation, and it's certainly likely more focused on Steve Sarowitz might have gone on a little bit of a rampage about I don't know if that this is when I think this is the moment when it's talking about, is this the Israel and Hamas thing when he possibly said something along those lines? It's whenever he said something. Claire Ayoub is the mystery person that overheard or was told something along the lines of how Steve Sarowitz is willing to ruin the lives of Blake and Ryan. He thought he was saying something in confidence, didn't he, basically? I feel like this Claire Ayoub thing was either Blake has got directly in contact with her, or somebody has, or she's been aware through mutual people from Wayfair who might have been on the ends with us, set and in the auspices of Empire Waste, and things have been said backwards and forwards, and maybe she's got a bit, ooh, I don't want this guy all over my movie, and maybe she's been off with him, and Justin at that point in his life was under a fair amount of pressure, we might say, in the fall of 2020, in the late summer, fall of 2024. He wasn't being his best self, I would imagine. By that point, he was pretty damn knackered. So I think we've got to bear all of that in mind, haven't we, basically? So let's just have a quick look if there was anything else I was going to do documents-wise. I messed up that bit, didn't I? But never mind. So what have we got here? So that is that the Claire Ayoub thing? Oh no, that's I think I've got it all mixed up. What I was going to say, that's the Claire Ayoub thing. So she was contacted by the assistant to Steve Sarowitz to schedule a time for me and Mr. Sarowitz to speak. He didn't identify a topic for the meeting. She was worried that it was about her recent request related to Justin not being on the set and not being a part of the marketing. And she was worried about being pressured into abandoning the prior agreement. And we don't know, but hopefully we will know soon what that was all about. As many of us have said, it's like I said earlier, what does repeated negative interactions mean? That could just mean you didn't gel with a person. That something, like I said, about your energy and that somebody else's energy, that there's a couple of people in my life that over time, that I'm aware of sometimes come to me for me to problem solve, and then I never see them again until they have another problem, and then they pop up out of the blue as if they're my best mate and they just want to be in touch. And it's like I recognize now the energy, and when your energy doesn't match somebody's, and when you're just facilitating somebody or whatever it is. So you can just have a clash of energies, or you can just pick up a sense from somebody that there's something about them that just doesn't gel with you. Like I say about the spirituality thing, non-spiritual people sometimes just can't deal with a spiritual person. You've not got things in common, and you might feel that barrier. So what does verbal abuse mean? That's what we're asking ourselves, really, because as I pointed out someplace else, when you think of verbal abuse on sets, it's kind of the norm. Actors tend to be people with heightened emotions. Producers, there's a lot of money on the line. There's deadlines, there's shutdowns, there's all kinds of things going on, isn't there? The story's just there's just writing problems and all of the rest of it. They are heated environments movie set. So, and this, it sounds like this was this lady's first major experience of writing and directing. This was her big entry point, if you like. So, did she know what she was getting into? Did she know what to expect? But verbal abuse, what are we talking about basically? Because if it was, as I said before, if it was racist or sexist, we would know that from this affidavit. And as many people are saying, it basically doesn't mean anything to do with Justin. The worst it can be is some kind of slur on Steve Sarowitz, really, because Justin is not being sued for verbal abuse against people. So it doesn't really come into play. It's just desperation, isn't it, really, on Blake's part? Oh, here's like maybe what I was looking for. So what is this one? Yeah, so this was the hairdresser, Vivian Baker. So you described for us in response to Ms. Bender's question, several incidents that you characterized, I believe, as inappropriate. Did all of those incidents occur during the first phase of the filming? And the answer was that would be correct. And I think here she's trying to clarify how she prepared for the deposition, how this Vivian Baker was prepared via Zoom call and meetings with lawyers. And it seems here that she's being advised not to talk about anything that Vivian Baker is being advised not to talk about anything that she's previously discussed with her attorneys, and Ellen's just confirming, I'm not asking you to confirm what you spoke about basically with your attorneys, but just did it happen? Were you prepared? And so, yes, you had a few Zoom calls and a meeting of a couple of hours to prepare for the deposition. Correct. And was anybody else at the meeting that you had with your counsel? And then it cuts and it's not there. So that was that bit really. And what we got here. So this is Warren Zavala. Oh, just reminded me who he is. He's somebody's agent, isn't he? Warren Zavala. Gone out of my head now. I knew it just before I came on. Oh, I think he is Blake's WME representative. So do you know whether Ms. Lively's written agreement provides for her to have a role in the editing of the movie? His answer, I do not. And then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Do you know where the movie was filmed? Yes. Where? New Jersey. Were you ever on the set during filming? I was. How frequently? I went twice, which is one more time than I've ever gone to any set in 24 years. Is there a reason? And then the time jumps. It goes from like 10 till 2. Are you aware of any incidents that made Ms. Lively uncomfortable during the second phase of filming? No. Your second visit to the set occurred during the second phase of filming, correct? Correct. And everything seemed to be going well to your observation during that second visit, correct? And his answer was yes, correct. Did you personally hear any complaints from Ms. Lively during the second phase of filming? Yes, in the post process around this testing of the cut of the film. And as everybody has said, from the contract, there's nothing in her contract that says that she gets a cut of the film or gets to commandeer the editing bay or countermand what the posters are going to look like or anything else. So, okay, other than an issue relating to a testing of a cut of the film that Ms. Lively didn't know about, any other complaints you heard from Ms. Lively during the second phase of filming? From that point forward, yes, there was definitely issues in terms of her, and I think he's probably had to think carefully about how he was going to phrase it, her interaction, I think, with Justin and their collaboration in the final stages of post, which he was representing an actress, not an editor or a, or a marketer or whatever else she was messing about with. And there's the interesting thing in the contract, isn't there? This thing of she wasn't supposed to be disclosing anything about what had gone on Obviously they were supposed to go to arbitration rather than court. If there was issues between them, they were supposed to go to arbitration first, according to the terms of that contract. But also this business of she wasn't supposed to be revealing details about what was going on set, and certainly not to do with the filming. And it's the big question is how legal or how permissible was it for her to basically steal the movie and go take it to Book Bonanza? And I think a big part of the Josh Greenstein thing, who was the Sony executive, a big part of his deposition, I think, will have been who gave Blake permission? What was said? Did somebody give her permission to take the entire movie, which wasn't even finished? She ended up changing the music on it and everything. There would have been still like mistakes all over the place. Who gave her permission to take that movie? Did you greenlight her taking that movie to Book Bonanza and showing it basically when it was Wayfarer's movie, when it didn't belong to her? I mean, that's kind of appalling. It's always been a bit appalling, but I think it's even more appalling with some time and distance on it, isn't it? But yeah, I think a big part of that Josh Greenstein's thing and why Blake was so keen to get in first on the questioning on the day will have been to do with they know one of the questions is going to be who allowed her to take did she steal the movie in effect and take it to Book Bonanza against what everybody involved wanted? So yeah. So this question here, okay, tell me what you know specifically about the problems in the final stages of post, and then it cuts off again. So we haven't been revealed very much, basically. I think there's a little bit at the top there. There was just a little bit of argy-bargy between his attorney or representative just going to object to the extent it calls for speculation. And I think when they're doing deposition, all they say is objection. They don't say why they're objecting. It's like a placeholder kind of thing rather than because so Ellen has put, okay, we don't do speaking objections, just objection is sufficient. So what else did we get? Yeah, just again a little bit with Danny Greenberg, who was Justin's WME rep. Question, by the way, where was the film shot? Let's stick with the first phase of filming. If you know, in New Jersey, I believe. So that's where the alleged SH happened, isn't it, in the first phase of filming? So all of this is like rough transcript. It would have been polished up a bit after this. He says, visiting a client, which is what I do when my clients are directing films. Has this got anything interesting? Right, by Miss Garofalo. Okay, and in this one, the second dark blue box, about 2/3 of the way down, it's a message from you to Mr. Baldoni, to Mr. Heath, rather. Is that correct? And his answer, so let's see here. And then the question, I guess my question is, so what's your question? Is that one directed to Mr. Heath or Mr. Baldoni? And Danny Greenberg has answered, it looks like this was a conversation between Justin and me. Okay, and you say to Mr. Baldoni, yup, and I'm there to have your back and remind you, not that you need me to, that you are the man and you are going to crush this. But poor Justin seems to need that rather a lot, doesn't he, Pete? Like he had this little circle that kind of big him up, like, give him a little bit of a boost, an energy boost before he has to tackle tough things. He seems to like, like a boxer having his shoulders massaged before he goes into something. So they are your partners. It was theirs too. You want to mention this AM event, their acknowledgement of the continued extortion and effort to gain control of the film. At the time you sent these suggestions for letter to Sony, you sent it to Mr. Baldoni. Had you had discussions with anyone at Sony about Ms. Lively's effective attempts at extortion? Then there's been an objection. Then the witness, Sir Danny Greenberg, I had ongoing conversations with Ange Gianetti, the executive on the project, about the behaviour that Blake was displaying along the way. And you remember, Ange Giannetti was the one Blake was going to and complaining about the SH supposedly, or people's behaviour. And at this point in time, what was on the table was the Premier issue. And then Ellen, you were choosing your words very carefully, weren't you? And then objections. The witness, I don't remember my state of mind when I wrote this letter. And then Ellen Garofalo again, is it your practice to choose why you are your words? Choose your, I imagine that should say, choose your words carefully when conveying an important message. And the answer, I do my best. And then the question, and you used the word extortion in this chat, suggesting to Mr. Baldoni what he might write to Sony, correct? So that's saying you were trying to be careful, and yet you were still using the word extortion. Extortion's a fairly firm word, isn't it? It's not something you bandy around willy-nilly. So there's an objection there from Ms. Leader. The witness, yes, it's in the text. That's a pretty strong word, isn't it? More objections. It felt appropriate at the moment. So I think that's Danny Greenberg, you know, because we've tended to demonize everybody to do with WME, but we've never been a little bit fair and considered that, like, the middlemen might not have wanted these things to happen to Justin, you know what I mean? So by Ellen Garofalo, you anticipated my next question. Thank you. So she was going to say, did you think it was appropriate, basically? So then you to use extortion. Then you go on to say, but don't in any way put Sony on the defensive or indict them. Then if you can be contrite in some capacity, very briefly, acknowledging the two of you had your moments where she would dissect your energy, word choice, and personality frequently. So basically, like what I'm saying, she invented a personality clash to suit herself, really, to suit her agenda, that led to mutual discomfort working with one another, because Justin would not have known what the hell he could and couldn't say to her by that point. So not everyone gets along, kind of thing. Not all personalities are compatible. That's just human nature, isn't it? Now, when you were suggesting to Mr. Baldoni that he writes something to Sony saying, you know, other people have agreements, or downplaying the agreements, I don't mean disagreements, that should be, did you believe that Mr. Baldoni was taking Ms. Lively's conduct too seriously? And then there's been objections. The witness, I'm not really following the question. Then Ellen, again, okay, I'll withdraw it. They do tend to go quite easy on people in deposition, it would say. They often don't push it a lot. I guess it's because they're getting the bare bones, aren't they, which they believe that if it comes to court, they can flesh it out a bit. That it's not worth, that sometimes maybe you're playing too much of your hand if you give too much away at deposition level, maybe. So you used the word extortion, correct? And he answered yes. Sounds to me like you believed at the time of this chat, July 26, 2024, that it was more than just ordinary incompatibility between Baldoni and Ms. Lively. Is that a true statement? More objections. I think my use of the word extortion there was referencing just cumulative behaviour that both the studio and Wayfarer and Justin was having to manage. And so that's why I used the words. So Ellen has then said that would be more than just a disagreement between two different personalities, wouldn't it, Mr. Greenberg? And then he answered, well, their personalities, you know, again, I think the text speaks for itself, but I think they were not getting along. And so I think it's important that I was suggesting to Justin that he be, and that's where it cuts off. But it is fairly telling, all of it, isn't it? And then what else have we got? I mean, Jed's in bother again. But it is basically this business of how they came back and said, actually, some of that stuff, we didn't say it before, but it is actually attorney-client privilege because, you know, actually, Jed was being represented by Lina Friedman at that time. We just forgot to remind everybody. It's like, I don't know, There's some funny bits in it. I don't know. It's a 4-page letter. So this is quite an old letter, but I think I don't know if some of this was unsealed, but it's all to do with this, like when it's to do with Case and Coslow and all of that, and these messages where attorneys were tagged in on it, and was it privileged or was it not privileged? And Wayfarer or Jed Wallace came back and said, actually, I was represented by Lionel Friedman at that time, which he was initially, and they're kind of trying to say that actually that never went away. We never kind of came completely off representing Jed, if you like. So there was a bit of backwards and forwards going on about that, as to, obviously Blake was pretty annoyed that they were coming back at this point in time and saying, oh, actually, it was a bit of that. So consistent with their apparent worldview that Ms. Lively is to blame for anything negative that happens to them, the Wallace defendants go so far as to fault Ms. Lively for not raising their privilege claims for them. And as much as they appear to believe otherwise, Ms. Lively is not the defendant's keeper. So she shouldn't be, pointing out things for them and remembering that Lina Friedman, at some point in time was representing Jed and all of that. But I don't think I need to go into all of that for you. But perhaps most shockingly, in their attempt to again blame Ms. Lively for the embarrassing consequences of their own lack of diligence, the Wallace defendants charged Ms. Lively with the knowledge that Lina Friedman represented the Wallace defendants in connection with these issues in their short-lived California litigation against the New York Times. So that's where it must have come into play. So basically, Lina Friedman was saying, we represented him at that time. And actually, the CRD being released was quite interesting as well, because I think it had been a while since we'd actually seen that, where it actually does on the CRD, it's there in blatant terms that Jed Wallace is scooped in, tagged into to the SH claims. So he's literally listed there on the CRD as under her accusations of SH when he'd never even met her. But yeah, that it was at that point in time, I guess, when the whole New York Times thing went into play, that initially Lina Friedman were representing Jed. So this is Lyman's determination on that. So it was filed on the 10th of October. So just quickly, how many pages is it? 3. So they moved for it. This is something a little bit different, actually. It's not what I thought. It's they moved for an extension of their deadline to designate rebuttal experts until 30 days after the court rules on their pending motion to dismiss. I think I do think they're being awful cheeky at this point in time when they know Lyman at this point. For the following reasons, the motion is denied. The Wallace defendants previously moved to stay discovery pending resolution of their first motion to dismiss. The court denied that request, finding that on balance, the good cause factors did not warrant imposing a stay. I guess, I guess for Jed Wallace, he's thinking, why should I have to pay for chuffing rebuttal experts when I might not even need rebuttal experts if this bloody judge just addressed my motion to dismiss myself out of this shit. A motion to dismiss that he's already dismissed once. It must be quite frustrating for him, mustn't it? So although the Wallace defendants assert that things are different this time around, so that they shouldn't have to go ahead with discovery or whatever, the court is unconvinced. To be sure, as with their initial motion to dismiss, which the court ultimately granted, the Wallace defendants' renewed motion presents substantial arguments for dismissal. But while courts consider the strength of a motion to dismiss in assessing a request for a stay of discovery, a stay is an intrusion into the ordinary processes of administration and judicial review, and should be granted only in rare circumstances. So there's all that case law quoted there. And the court continues to believe that a stay is unwarranted given the relative burdens of proceeding with the discovery that remains. As with their initial request for a stay, the prejudice to the Wallace defendants in proceeding with discovery is limited. For even if the court ultimately grants their motion to dismiss for deficient jurisdiction and venue, related litigation is ongoing in the Western District of Texas, and any expert discovery conducted here is likely to be relevant there as well. So basically, Lyman doesn't seem to like being interrupted in the general course of things, doesn't he? He's not really been all that pleased. Maybe not pleased is the wrong word, but he was ready for summary judgments, wasn't he? But he didn't really appreciate this motion for judgment on the pleadings that tried to interject and speed things up. He likes it on his schedule, I would say. He likes people to go through the normal processes and do the things that they're supposed to be doing in the order that they're supposed to be doing them. You know, even though the motion for judgment on the pleadings is a normal course of law, I don't think he was expecting it in this case, was he? Everybody was focused on summary judgments. So the Wallace defendants assert that the calculus flips for expert discovery as relevant facts may be similar across multiple claims, defenses, or even lawsuits, but expert interpretation and relevance depends on the specifics of the claims and defenses asserted. So it changes on a dime, basically, doesn't it, expert witnesses? Because if the case is changing, then what you need to ask them or what they need to figure out changes, doesn't it? So you could either overdo it or underdo it, couldn't you? But even if expert discovery depends to some extent more so on the specifics of the claims and defences asserted, the significant substantive overlap between these two cases means that any expert discovery is still highly likely to be relevant in both actions. On the other hand, and as the court has previously indicated, fragmenting discovery in this case into dual tracks risks further delaying this action and prejudicing other parties. So, more case law, the court finds that plaintiffs likely will be prejudiced by a stay of discovery, particularly since discovery as to the co-defendant is proceeding. So more case law quote in there, whereby finding prejudice to the plaintiff where staying discovery would create two separate staggered discovery schedules as between defendants and the numerous other defendants in this case. It is tricky in this case, isn't it, when everybody is interrelated and there's overlap. It would be tricky to just say, you kind of have to give him that much in essence, that to make a 30-day delay simply for Jed Wallace is tricky. But on the same hand, I can appreciate that Jed Wallace is thinking, I shouldn't even be in this thing at this point. So why am I having to keep paying out for stuff or figuring out stuff or complying with stuff? Why isn't the judge, addressing that? When is he intending to address that, do you think? Jed's motion to be dismissed out of the second amended complaint, when he was dismissed out of the first amended complaint. So the Wallace defendants assert that should any claims survive their motion to dismiss, expert discovery can resume on an accelerated schedule. But given that the deadlines for completing expert discovery and filing motions for summary judgment are rapidly approaching, any delays risk the possibility of substantially disrupting scheduling in this matter. Blah, blah. As such, the relative burdens once again counsel in favour of denying the Wallace defendants' motion for a stay of discovery, and that has been closed as a result of that. So I think that is mostly what I had today. I am sure there will be more. I always miss something that I intended to talk about, and then I think, oh, I can't be bothered doing that next time, or it's not that interesting after all. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the current environment at play in this lawsuit? I would be interested to know. And the current environment just culturally, which Taylor Swift's album seems to have generated. It's interesting, isn't it, that all of this is coalescing at the same time, and it's also dovetailed with kind of things that happened in the UK to do with acknowledging biological sex is real. And then that kind of seemed to weaken the Democrat position in a way, if you like, because they tend to be more liberal, obviously. And that whole thing seems to have somehow dovetailed with the Taylor thing, that actually she's talking about being a trad wife and stuff like that. It's like all of it's I just find it's a really interesting year or so that we're having, where everything seems to be getting turned on its head. And even in terms of the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the debate that that has um, brought about, there's like a lot of interesting stuff going on. I think if you are not questioning right now your own beliefs and really examining what you think about things in a broad and general sense on all kinds of topics, you're really missing a trick right now, because I think it's a really interesting time to be questioning what you believe in and what you hold true. And this idea of when did it become anti to want to be happy and to be in love and to potentially have children, when did that become something to be demonized? And why are people so threatened by that idea? It's I think it find it a really interesting time and how it ties in with all of this. It's such a weird thing. But anyway, you let me know your thoughts, and please do hit that like and subscribe and share if you can. Thank you for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it, and hopefully see you again soon. Bye bye.